by the California Conference of Directors of Environmental Health and graciously sponsored by Attendees Software. If you want to indicate participants' contribution to the webinar service, providing technical support during the presentation, and for the web channel. Okay, next slide, Dan. Dan is controlling the slides from his desktop, so I'll be queuing him when I need to with the slides. I'll be providing a brief introduction, and then we'll get started with his presentation. I'm Jose and Sunnyvale, Director of Environmental Health for Palo Alto County, and the chairperson of the CCDEH Information Technology and Data Management Committee. Today, being Firth, Cal EPA will be providing an update to the use of automated data exchange to fulfill local, state, and federal reporting requirements. It's the implementation of mandated electronic reporting for regulated businesses statewide. We will hear from, we'll also hear about the technologies to implement the use of collected information. After the presentation, we'll have a question and answer period moderated by Jill Todd from Attendees Software. So make sure to take note of your questions throughout the presentation, and you can ask those questions at the end. Behind the scenes, if you have technical difficulties, we do have Vlad from Attendees Software ready to assist you, and I'll be providing a telephone number if you have any difficulty to call Vlad. Okay, next slide. You need to go over to ground rules to make sure that you signed on correctly. We want to make sure that your name is correctly so that you can receive continuing education units. So first of all, when you signed on, you should have seen a slide like this, and put in your name and your name, and the email. For multiple people sharing the same desktop, please you should include all of the names of people in the your name section there. Okay, move on to the slide. After that, you should see, you can see a little further there, a window like this, and shows that I will call into the meeting and then dial the number on your screen. After that, you will receive an access code to sign on to the meeting. And the checking ID that includes, you can see that is really important because that way we can identify you as the caller and you can receive your continuing education unit. If it's not using the telephone to call in to use computer for audio, you must have speakers and the microphone for that option. And here on the slide, shows where your name will appear on this participant panel with a phone icon next to it. If you don't see the phone icon next to your name, this means you forgot to enter your attendee ID. If you want to receive continuing education units, you have to hang up and redial the number and enter the attendee ID as shown on your computer. So you can see on this screen that the attendee ID is 409. That's not the correct number for this call-in today. Okay, so next slide. Okay, whoops. If you do need to call back in, there's meeting information tab at the top of your screen. If you can also go to the top of the screen and you can find the information that are at the top of your screen to get the information you need to put in your attendee ID and call back in to get the information you need. And here we have an 800 number you can call. Okay, if you are having technical difficulties, just call Vlad and you will receive this if you need, and it's 800-263-9847, extension 713. Okay, take it away, Dan.
All right, thank you, Leslie. And thank you, everyone, for inviting me here on the first morning of your conference. It's only going to get better, right? So, what I'm going to do this morning is go over the status of the electronic reporting project and give you a brief overview of CERS. And I believe that the plan is that this presentation will be available later as a PDF. So some of the information on here one of which is CERS. But the electronic reporting project goals is actually intended to allow businesses, CUPAs and PAs to report electronically to comply with Chapter 6.11 of the Health and Safety Code. It's intended to provide an emergency response and planning resource, establish data exchange capability between CUPAs, County PA, and others, and then to provide a mechanism for allowing this data, or at least some of it, to be available for future public access. CERS is the main component of this project. The webinar style interface that we developed for businesses to report, and for many of the CUPAs to use directly. It's an online resource available to emergency responders through the approval process that enables the CUPAs to authorize emergency responders in their jurisdiction to have access to information in CERS for their regulated businesses. This data is available to be downloaded, so emergency responders can put it on their own systems. The data is able to be exchanged with the CUPAs, which is important for the decade clients in particular, but also other CUPAs that may have other software systems that want business data reported down into their system. Also, we want to be able to exchange information with other systems, such as plans for emergency response. We'll talk about that shortly. There are approximately 144,000 regulated businesses in California, and of course, you know there are 83 CUPAs and 32 PAs. Those are the primary users of CERS. There are over 1,000 local fire agencies or emergency response agencies that ultimately could access CERS through their CUPA for information. And then there are County PA and the state's related agencies, the Water Board, EPSC, OES, and State Fire Marshal's Office, all have interest in the information that's reported in CERS. And of course, US EPA does it as well. The information that's being reported to CERS you're probably very familiar with. It's all of the CUPA-related program information. Business hazardous materials, hazardous waste-related information, underground and above-ground tanks, inspection and enforcement information from the CUPAs and the PAs is also reported. We're using the term CME, stands for Compliance, Monitoring, and Enforcement. So if I use that acronym later, that's what it means. The one thing that's not in CERS is the CALR program. We've been advised that that is one program in the Unified Program that should remain outside the electronic reporting sphere. So you'll find that the business activity question that asks if a business is regulated under CALR, that's all the information that will be provided for that program. Just by way of clarification, electronic data transfer, or EDT, we have capability of two different types of EDT. One-way EDT refers to businesses that report their data to CERS and the ability to move that data from CERS down into your local system for your CUPA to be able to manage their CUPA program. Two-way EDT is necessary where a local agency wants to have a business reporting portal that businesses can choose to use instead of CERS. In order to do that, then we would need to have this two-way data exchange so that business data reported to the local portal could be reported back to CERS. Last year and through the beginning of this year, we undertook a rather large seeding effort, and many of the CUPAs put in a very large amount of effort to take data that they have been collecting for a number of years in their local systems, to put it into CERS to make it easier for businesses in their jurisdictions to report. So thanks to the effort of the CUPAs and the participating agencies, we were able to create 90,000 facility files in CERS and update or enter information about the facility and over 350,000 hazardous materials inventory records. We put in 18,000 UST records, all of which saved the businesses from having to do that data entry. So it was a huge effort on your CUPA's part. I think it provided an opportunity to make the whole system start up more quickly and more effectively for the business community. We are now almost done with the project. All of the Cal EPA deliverables have been completed. There are a couple of enhancements that they're working on, but essentially the original project deliverables are done. They've been completed and released. So what's left in the electronic reporting project is primarily CUPA implementation efforts. Decade and software vendors are still doing some development and deployment of their products. CUPAs and PAs still have local workflow processes to develop or modify. We do have the local portals for 14 CUPAs that some of them are already launched, they're not complete, and some have yet to be launched. So there's a fair amount of work still to happen at the local level before this electronic reporting project is totally done. Currently, though, all businesses in California can report. They've been able to report since January of 2012. All CUPAs and participating agencies can report their compliance monitoring and enforcement information. They can download business data from CERS in a flat file format, an Excel format, and that's been available for quite some time as well. All of our EDT services for data exchange is now available. The two-way data exchange has been available for the last few weeks, and the one-way EDT was available for production purposes in June. We have been exchanging LTG data with US EPA for several years now, and we have been exchanging facility and chemical inventory information with EPA, which is an emergency response system established by US EPA with funding from both EPA and the Homeland Security and managed by the University of Texas at Dallas. We've been exchanging information with them from responders for at least the past year, more recently on a monthly basis. So business information that's reported to CERS is now available at ePlan, and we're encouraging fire agencies and CUPAs to look at ePlan to see if that is a useful resource for them, because it is a 24/7 system, whereas the CERS system is not. CERS is better intended to be an emergency responder tool. It's simply a resource for emergency response information. ePlan is designed and built to be an emergency responder tool. State agencies and US EPA now have view access to CERS, so they can look at what business data has been reported. They can look at CME data that the CUPAs and PAs have reported. They can't make any changes to the data, but they can view it and download it. Recently, we activated the large and longitude fields in CERS and set it up so that either businesses or the CUPAs can modify the location so they can correctly position regulated facilities on a mapping system. It's very easy to do, and there's a couple screenshots here that shows you what the business or the regulator would see. And moving the location is as easy as clicking and dragging the icon. The biggest enhancement that I think CUPAs have been waiting for a while is the Submittal comparison tool. That's going to be out around September, and it will allow it will show what changes have been made from current submission to the previous submission by businesses. So this should be a big asset to the CUPAs and the participating agencies in terms of managing their workload. They'll be able to see that a submittal either has no changes from the previous submittal, or if there are changes, it will identify and highlight what those changes were. So it should make the review process of business submittals much more efficient. There's been a question about funding sources. Are there any additional funding sources for local agencies? We have extended, as many of you know, many of the CUPA grants and EPA grants to the end of this year to give them time to spend their funds. There will be no additional funding from Cal EPA under the Electronic Reporting Project, but other possible opportunities are firefighter assistance grants, HTTP grants, possibly the CUPA Forum Board, or maybe even the Water Board for UST-related activities. If anyone has other ideas that we can share with the rest of the CUPAs in the state, I'd love to hear them, but those are the only ones that I can think of at this time. So, for businesses, are we there yet? Yes and no. Right now we have about 2/3 of the businesses will be reporting to CERS. CERS can report to a local portal once the portals are operational. 82% of the businesses will be reporting to a CUPA that will be using EDT to electronically exchange data between CERS and their local system. 18% of the businesses will be reporting to CUPAs that will either use CERS directly or will manually download information and manually upload or enter the information. I mentioned earlier, so now I see 141,000 facilities. There's 144,000 regulated facilities in California. We have created files in CERS for 141,000 of them. So most of the facilities in the state have a presence in CERS, but if you look at the third bullet, only a third have actually submitted their annual inventory information for this year. And we are at 60% of the year, so we have not a lot of time left to gather the rest of the facility information and inventory information that businesses have to report. Same thing is true with underground tanks. A lot of the data has not been entered yet because the businesses have not gone in, reviewed, updated, and actually submitted their data. So there's a fair amount of work that still has to be done on getting the businesses to report by the end of the year. The other statistic here is just an FYI. We have 2/3 of the businesses are single facility businesses. So the rest of them are in what we call organizations. We set this up in CERS to let businesses that have many facilities more easily manage who have access within their organization to their facilities. So there's 2,700 businesses that have a total of 44,000 facilities in the state. And there's statistics there that show you, Verizon has over 5,000 facilities, 450 businesses have 10 or more facilities. And these are typically in more than one CUPA. So we have a fairly large population of businesses that are particularly interested in consistency across the CUPAs. So there's a few new things in CERS for businesses. We posted some training clips. Most recently, we created a feature that would allow a business with multiple facilities to upload facility information and chemical inventories for all of their facilities at one time rather than doing it one facility at a time. We also have a feature to allow for large chemical inventories to be uploaded in an offline approach. So if some business facility has greater 500 line items of inventory to upload. We can handle that on a separate basis for them. So they don't have to manually enter large volumes of information. The local reporting requirements have been posted on CERS, so they're available for all the businesses to see. They know exactly what your local reporting requirements are that are different than the state's, if you have any. And the CERS business user group has posted a website that's available for their businesses, and they've been developing guides and flowcharts and questions and answers to help the businesses comply with CERS. So that web link is a good web link to refer your regulated businesses to for more information or for an opportunity to participate with the business user group in helping define future changes in CERS. I mentioned earlier that a number of the businesses have facilities in more than one CUPA. The two biggest issues we've had to date that keep coming up is businesses want to make sure that CERS is easy to use to report, and we're constantly looking at ways to make that happen. Businesses with facilities in more than one CUPA have a second major concern, and that is reporting consistency. We get a lot of feedback from the businesses on that particular issue. So just something to be aware of. So where are the CUPAs? They are doing quite well. As I said, we're winding down the year. There's a pretty fair amount of work for them to do, but all of them have made tremendous efforts and headway. There's 48 CUPA clients that are decade users. That covers 103,000 businesses in the state. All but 8 have been upgraded to Envision Connect. 30 have been set up for one-way EDT, 6 are already in production. And as I mentioned earlier, the two-way EDT services are now available. I think Decade's planning to start working on the release of or establishing two-way EDT later this month or early in September. Their contracts with Cal EPA run through the end of September, and they're on track to complete the deliverables by then. There are 14 decade CUPAs that will have portals. There are no other CUPAs using any other software system that will have portals. So these will be the only local reporting portals in California. These portals are an optional reporting mechanism for businesses, so they can choose to use a local portal as opposed to going to CERS. And in many cases, they may prefer to report to the local portal because your CUPAs are working to establish additional functionalities and enhancements to make it easier for their businesses to report there. They can do any customization things that CERS can't do just because we're a statewide system. 8 of the CUPAs have partially live portals now, and 6 are in the process of being released or development to be released. Garrison is another software provider. There are 11 CUPA clients, and mostly smaller CUPAs, covering just under 9,000 facilities. There are local system implementation issues. They're still working with each of 10 of the CUPA clients to make sure that the systems operate locally the way the CUPAs need them to operate to manage their program. They are not planning to have local portals. They are presently working on EDT services, but that's been slow because they've been focusing on addressing the local system needs first. So they have a contract with us that runs through the end of August as yet. They have not delivered any, not met any of the EDT deliverables. So it looks like what will happen is they'll focus on developing the local system. So each of the CUPAs have what they need to run their program locally. And until EDT services are developed, those CUPAs will have to download business data that they need and upload their CME data that they're required to report. Excella has 3 CUPA clients, San Diego being the largest one, and Santa Monica and Roseville. Again, these agencies are not planning to have a portal. Excella has created what they call an adapter software product that will interface between their local system, Excel Automation, and CERS. And once EDT production is established for San Diego, all business data that's reported in CERS will be transferred to Excel Automation at San Diego, and then Excel will move on to establishing the same EDT capability with Santa Monica and Roseville. Their contract with Cal EPA to deliver this EDT capability was completed at the end of June. So EdSoft is another software provider that has been working with one CUPA and possibly 2. OneStep is a third that's been working with Oakland for some time. They're primarily an inspection software provider. So they'll be managing the inspection services, and they'll download business information as they need it. Let's see. The upload and download and direct service CUPAs are done for all practical purposes from Cal EPA's perspective. We've had all of the functionality needed to run their business need since the beginning of last year. This covers 18 CUPAs. We're putting the Garrison CUPA clients in the same category of upload-download CUPAs because I think they'll probably be using that for the balance of this year unless Garrison is successful in creating EDT services before the end of the year. We added an EDT status table in CERS so your CUPAs can look and see not only where they are, but where all the other CUPAs are in the state in terms of EDT capability. When they click on the little button on the left that says select, it shows them exactly what EDT services they're capable of performing. We also created some new reports that are downloadable Excel reports for CUPAs to use. So they can now easily run a report that will give them all of the accepted facility and inventory submittals in their jurisdiction. We added to this submittal status report, which is a report that you can run in CERS to search for facilities in your jurisdiction. For example, this one's Alameda County, and in the lower right-hand corner it shows that they have 1,124 facilities in CERS within their jurisdiction. And they can look at this through the website, but you can also download it as an Excel spreadsheet, and it will provide all of the facility information, the business activities, all the information that CUPA needs to know to run their local program. And in addition, we added a submittal status comments field. So for every submittal where the CUPA has either accepted or not accepted what business was reported, this report will show what the inspector actually said was either right or wrong with the submittal. So if an inspector rejected a submittal because it didn't contain some information, they put that in a little text box that gets automatically emailed to the business, and it shows up in this report. This will help CUPAs do some consistency evaluation because you can look at who's rejected submittals and what are the comments and who's accepted submittals. So there's an opportunity for the CUPAs to standardize or at least improve the way in which they review and accept and notify the businesses of the submittals. Emergency responders have access to CERS, as I mentioned. They need to contact the CUPA or PA, or the CUPA or PA can contact the fire agency, but the approval process is through the CUPA. And then, I mentioned earlier, E-Plan, that's a national tool. If fire agencies are interested in that, they can go to the E-Plan website, apply for access, and Cal EPA will approve or investigate if they have questions. But basically, Cal EPA is now handling the approval process for access to E-Plan, at least in the short term. So we are looking for feedback from CUPAs and CAs on whether E-Plan will meet their needs. Cal EPA's already got a quote from the University of Texas to do some enhancements to it to make it more useful for emergency responders, but we'd like to get feedback from folks before we finally make a decision on what to do. So, what's next? At Cal EPA's level, I think you're going to find that we'll be putting together more guidance letters to clarify issues that periodically come up either from your CUPAs or from the businesses. The decisions will come out in the form of guidance letters. I think one thing we found is that some agencies don't have local ordinances for local reporting requirements. So they've been requiring businesses to do things or report things, but they didn't necessarily have the legal authority to do that. So in the local requirements table that we put on CERS, we're including the local ordinance section so businesses know that these are legitimate reporting requirements and the local agency does have that authority. So CUPAs that want to have a local reporting requirement that's different than what the state has established, the local ordinance process is the way they'll have to go. We're trying to make sure that the portals that come out are consistent with CERS, both for data exchange purposes and for consistency in the information that is collected that relates to the Unified Program. We're currently working with the Water Board to improve the underground storage tank reporting requirements as they exist today. And I think you'll see in the future Cal EPA is going to modify their evaluation process because they'll be able to do a lot of review work in CERS before they come out to your site. Hopefully that'll result in less staff time on your part. And then CERS 3, which we're tentatively planning to come out in 2015, will be essentially a complete overhaul of CERS 2.0. So we're looking at what changes need to be made now in order to have CERS 3 ready for 2015. If we haven't completed the development and review of what changes need to happen by December of 2013, it may move the release date of CERS 3.0 out into later 2015 or possibly later than that. We want to make sure that the regulatory process is consistent with the development process so that we have the regs in place when we develop the changes to CERS, and we want to make sure that there's plenty of time for the software vendors, such as Decade, Excel, and Harrison, to make changes in their system before these changes, whatever they are, become effective. The Data Steering Committee is the lead agency right now under UPAG that's looking at potential changes to CERS for CERS 3.0. On the long-term horizon, I think Cal EPA is expecting that environmental justice is going to be an important issue that will affect CERS and the type of data that is currently collected, how that data is used, and possibly changes in what data we'll collect in the future. And availability of this data in CERS and the availability to the public, especially down the road when we create a public website, probably in 2015. I think there's going to be higher expectations regarding the quality of the data. The public will certainly want to access this information more often, and then it's likely there's going to be more scrutiny. I'm sure there will be questions about, why are or aren't local CUPAs doing something? Why are there violations in businesses that don't result in enforcement action? I'm sure there will be lots of questions that will come up that would be a direct result of the availability of this information. So, to me, it's something that CUPAs need to be aware of and plan for, so that they're prepared to respond. I have a bullet here about the data warehouse. Cal EPA is planning to create the ability to move the data from CERS into this data warehouse and combine it with other data sources from other state agencies. And that's the point of origin, I think, where the public website will collect this information. So both of those, the data warehouse and the public website, are not underway projects at the time, but both have been identified as future Cal EPA projects. So you'll probably hear more about those being established and work starting on those as we go forward. So what should CUPAs be doing? I think, as I mentioned, that they need to be looking at their processes and make sure that their workflows are set up the way they need them to work for their best efficiency. They need to make sure their businesses report what they're required to report this calendar year. I know this is a really tumultuous year, and it's a huge workload for everybody over and above what they typically have to do. But Cal EPA does want to make sure that businesses know they need to report this calendar year. One thing that would be helpful going forward is for the CUPAs and the participating agencies to identify improvements that they'd like to see that would make the system work more efficiently for their businesses and for themselves. And in order to do that, they need to be pretty conversant or fluent in how CERS operates. So as they get more familiar with CERS, I think they may identify things that would help them work better. They should solicit input from their local businesses. How does it work? Is it working well? If not, what needs to be done? And then to work with Cal EPA and the CUPA Forum Board to make sure that the feedback gets back to Cal EPA so that we have the opportunity to address these issues. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Leslie.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Actually, we're turning it over to Jill at this point to go over the question and answer moderation.
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Jill with the EPA Company. So to be sensitive to everyone's schedule, we're going to do our best to answer as many questions as possible. But it looks like we got about 20 minutes, so it'll be pretty good. If you have any questions, go ahead and raise your hand on the lower left panel of your participation, and then I'll get back to you to answer any questions for Dan. Okay, we have our first question from Lake County. I'm going to go ahead and mute you, and you can answer your question for Dan. Layton, are you there?
Yes, hi, Dan. The existing CUPA had a requirement in the system for annual recertification, and we would send out a form in our invoice for a fee, and the business would complete this recertification form if their business plan has no change there, if they were to get the certificate. So if a business has no change, is there an electronic version now for this annual certification?
Yes. Good question, thank you. The current submittal, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
The current submittal process, once a business makes submittal, all future submittals start when they click to start the submittal process. CERS brings up a dialog box that asks them, do you want to start from a previous submittal or do you want to start from scratch? If they check from a previous submittal, all of the data they reported previously is put into draft form for this new submittal. And then, if there are no changes, they hit submit. And they're done with the process again. So it's a very quick process for the business to follow if they have no changes. And once the submittal comparison tool is out, it will be very fast for the CUPAs to look, because the comparison tool will say there's been no changes since the last submission. So the CUPA can then click accept and be done.
Thank you, Lake County. We have another question for you, Dan, from our very own Daryl Booth. Go ahead, Daryl.
Hi, Dan. Only softball questions, please. That's my policy, too. You mentioned any compliance monitoring and enforcement data. And I know you are aware that the CUPA Forum recently published a library of inspections and the corresponding information which can allow violations, and the corresponding things to allow those violations to be put in a checklist format for folks that's a lot more like CUPA. And we are working now to deploy that, of course, to all the CUPAs. So my question is, what expectation is Kelly putting out there for receiving CME data on what date and what degree and so forth? Thanks, Carol. That's a good question. The requirement for reporting specific CME data will go into effect when the new Title 27 reg package goes into effect, which is an hour will be the next couple of days. So that sets the standard that requires the CUPAs to report detailed information about all of their inspections. The requirement for reporting is within 30 days after the end of each calendar quarter. So the first requirement for all the CUPAs to report their CME data will be end of October of this year. Cali PA would, encourage CUPAs to enter their CME data in an ongoing way, so they're not creating a workload issue. But they do have to report it by 30 days after the end of each quarter.
Thank you, Dan. Does anybody else have any more questions they would like to ask Dan at this time? We do have one from Veronica. Go ahead, Veronica. I'll go ahead and meet you.
Hi, Dan. This is Veronica from Alameda County. I was just wondering, you said earlier that we will be able to view what percentage of each CUPA that has this information in, and I was wondering when that will be able to be seen as far as the expected versus the state versus the other CUPA.
That table will be out not this week, next week.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, I have a question.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Okay. Can you kind of expand on your tracker relationship and are those ever going to be
Good question. At this time, we don't have a plan to link GeoTracker and CERS. There's been talk about how to do it or what to do, but it really, as far as I know, it hasn't been talked between the Water Board and Cal EPA about what actually they want to do going forward. The GeoTracker, as you know, tracks closed cases and releases. CERS is primarily interested in collecting information about existing facilities. There is a big overlap because we track at CERS when things are closed, and there is the unauthorized release form that's required to be submitted. And I believe that can be submitted to Geospector. So there is an area of overlap. It just hasn't been put on our discussion topic when or what we should do in terms of coordinating those two.
Thank you, Dan. We also have another question from Daryl.
Thanks, Jill. So Dan, this one might be a little bit out of your comfort zone or even wheelhouse, so take a shot at this. I think a lot of our attendees are HSs that have a focus in the traditional community programs. Many of them also work in typical banks, and then we also have the RHS focus in inception. Just from your perspective, the data dictionary that exists for the CUPA programs and the structure that that brings to the data reporting, you see a correlation, success story, if you will, that might expand into other of the more traditional PhD programs. And I'll just back that up by explaining that, in SB1 came about, there was a data dictionary published at that time that hasn't been enforced, as far as I know. And then with South Code became the way to go, then of course there was a corresponding dictionary, but again, I don't believe it's actively used in practice. So if you give us your insight with all the things you've talked about the impact of having the data dictionary regulation and what that does to the program. Well, I think in general, the feedback is pretty positive about having a standardized data dictionary. Having a regulation creates some problems in terms of the work effort to modify it over time. Because anytime you want to add, change, or remove data fields, you have to go through the regulatory process. So CaliPedia was very interested in developing an alternate mechanism for revising and maintaining the data dictionary that allowed them to publish changes without going through the full regulatory process. They were unable to affect that this go around, and I don't know at this point what their plans are for the next reg cycle, but I would assume if it's possible to do that, they're going to work to come up with a more efficient way to keep data dictionary current. There is also because standards committee that's broader than the Unified Program that CaliPedia is involved with to try and standardize data elements between different programs. And I think, as Carol mentioned, having the dictionary standardized for reporting and services that really makes it a lot easier for businesses to know what to report. And I see advantages to using this data dictionary as a good example of benefits of standardizing data reporting across programs. So I suspect that we'll see some effort to go forward at that event. I'm not sure, I don't really have a broader view, just because my role is sort of limited to rolling out this electronic reporting project. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, Carol, the way we're hoping. That's great, Dan, and I think this is just a little bit outside the comfort zone. From my perspective as a software vendor, and I'm sure it's true of all the software vendors that work in this state, the existence of a formalized structure to the data actually helps us do more in terms of a consistent, reliable approach to managing data. And so it's been very interesting to watch, going all the way back to the Title 27, where it was in regulation, but followed somewhat loosely. Forms, of course, were established, and that helped quite a bit to the point now where we must, if a CUPA ends to what we want to do virtually no friction in effective formats shared between those with virtually no friction. And I just wondered if there was something like that you keep on the horizon for the other programs. So thank you for coming.
Okay.
Hey, I'd like to say something about that. It just, as the CCDEH statewide, is working towards performance measures, it's more and more important that we, move towards unification in all of the farmer home programs so that we can get information about, the different facilities that we have in each program and measure how we're doing it and report that. And that could lead to so many things, including, being able to apply for grants to help improve our program, or another piece of that is just the demand from the public to have information instantly, and again, having a citywide standard approach and being able to report that in one location would be really, really valuable. So the data initiative continues to be a goal for the CCDEH IT committee, but it's very difficult doing it on just a voluntary basis. Each jurisdiction has their own unique way of gathering data and own inspector reports, but it's something that we would like to move forward on. We would have to make it a higher priority.
Thank you, everybody. We only had a couple more minutes left for the ending. I just want to go ahead and thank you guys for all the questions the great questions you guys had for Jan. Go ahead, Leslie. I'm going to give it away to you to do the ending.
Okay, let's move on to the slide after this one, I think.
Okay.
One more. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say a little bit note about continuing education. To receive continuing education units, you must fill out the survey found on CCDEH.com. And then the homepage, is right on the homepage, you'll see a link to the Data Summit page. And on that page, you'll see a window or information for each of the sections, and next to that will be a link to the quiz for each of the presentations. So to receive your continuing education unit, you need to take a quiz and then also pay a $15 fee. You can pay online at CCDEH.com, where you can mail in your fax with a form found on the CCDEH.com website. And if you have any questions at all, you can contact Cheryl Baldwin at cheryl@CCDEH.com. And also on that same quiz, if you were getting continuing education units, there is a customer feedback part of that quiz. You don't have to take a quiz if you're not taking continuing education units, but we would still really like your feedback on the session, whether you thought it was how we can improve in the future. I hope you can join us next week. We have a really exciting presentation. Chris Crumley from Sacramento County is going to be providing a presentation on their online portal for their cross-connection control program. Even if you do not have a cross-connection control program, seeing how their public portal works and the great advances that they have realized as a result of that, it will be valuable for every jurisdiction, and I hope that you will be able to join us next Thursday at 9 for that session. So thank you for joining today, and I hope to see you next week. Actually, Mr. Milan will be providing the introduction, so I hope you will join us next week for that session. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.